We're spending time these days with the Gospel of Mark. The lectionary assigns our scripture readings most weeks, and it's been taking us on a journey through this Gospel for several months. Along the way, Mark has been trying to say something to us about what it means to have faith. Jesus calms the storm, or walks on water, or feeds the crowds, or heals diseases, and the word keeps coming up, faith. Some people don't seem to have it, and Jesus is disappointed and confused. Why do you have so little faith? He says. Others do have faith, and Jesus is overjoyed, even surprised. Go in peace. Your faith has made you well. What does it mean to have faith? Today is Rally Day, or Kickoff Sunday. We're starting a new program year today. And this year we're beginning a new children's program on Sunday mornings called Godly Play. For the last 18 months, our Director of Christian Education, Nancy, has worked tirelessly along with lots of other volunteers to plan and fundraise and organize and assemble materials and train and prepare for this day. My memories of Sunday school revolve mostly around three things. Number one, eating Play-Doh, which oddly enough has a very good taste, even after it's been played with for years by lots of children. Making crafts out of popsicles and cotton balls, usually sheep that Jesus would take care of until they ended up abandoned on the kitchen table. And trying to answer the teacher's questions before the other kids in the room could, because I had this annoying habit of trying to be the smartest kid in the room. Godly play is so much better than that. Godly play is based on the belief that each of us has an innate sense of the presence of God, even as very young children. And the godly play approach is to teach the stories of Scripture so that we have the metaphors and the images and the narratives we need when it comes time for us to enter a relationship with God. We carry those metaphors and narratives and images along the way with us in our relationship with God. So children sit in a semicircle on the floor and they hear a carefully constructed story told with figures and objects. The story is told with love and purpose, and each word is carefully chosen. And children are invited to wonder about God and the characters in the story. It's through their wondering that they engage with God. In the story of the great flood, they might ask, I wonder how it felt for Noah and the animals to be shut up in the ark for all that time. The story of the Good Shepherd, I wonder who the sheep could really be. At the end of any story, you might ask, I wonder which part is most about you. No one gives answers to these questions, and most of them have no right or wrong answer anyway. The children are simply invited to wonder. So today, in the story we heard from Mark, I wonder how the Syrophoenician woman felt when she headed home. The story we heard today is one of the most unusual and in some ways perplexing stories in the Gospels. Jesus has gone away for a vacation of sorts. Things were heating up around Galilee. He was angering people because of the good things he was doing and the astounding things he was saying. Pressure was building, so he left for a while by himself to get away to a place called Tyre. Tyre was a region north of Israel, a country that long ago had been at war with Israel and more powerful than them. And in the days of Jesus' ancestors, Tyre demanded trees and other goods from Israel. Israel had to pay. The saying went, they took our trees and gave us bread. Israel did not like the people of Tyre very much, and they had not liked them for a very long time. Jesus went away to Tyre where no one would know him, so he could lay low and get some rest. He entered a house, and no sooner had he introduced himself than word spread that he was there. Apparently, people knew his reputation. He could not go unnoticed. A woman in that region had a little daughter with an unclean spirit. We aren't sure what an unclean spirit was, actually, but we do know what it meant. It meant that the little girl was very sick and that she caused a lot of pain and disruption in her house. She probably did not sleep very well or play very well, and she could not go to school. She may have been violent or destructive in the house. It meant that the woman and her daughter and family had few friends because people were scared of them. Neighbors didn't come over for dinner. They did not walk together in the street. And the little girl did not play with other children in the village. Their life was lonely and hard, and no one could help them. The day she heard about Jesus, the woman left her little daughter at home and ran to the house where Jesus was. She burst through the door of the house and found Jesus asleep on the chair in the corner because he was on vacation after all. She ran up to him and got down on her knees and begged for her daughter's life. She begged him to cast out the demon and make her daughter well. Now, because we've gotten to know Jesus through these stories of Mark, we imagine this might be the kind of person Jesus would help. This sounds a lot like Jairus, whose daughter was dying. It sounds a lot like the woman who was hemorrhaging blood, who touched Jesus' robe. It sounds like a person in desperate need who trusted that Jesus could somehow help. So it's very hard to understand why Jesus responds to her the way he does. Let the children be fed first, for it's not fair to take the children's food and give it to the dogs. Did Jesus just call her a dog? Lots of people have wondered over the years what Jesus meant. Mark is careful to tell us that the woman was Gentile and Syrophoenician. It's not surprising because Jesus was on vacation in Gentile country where Syrophoenicians lived. But you remember that Israel had a long history of not liking the people from Tyre. They also had a long history of calling the people from Tyre dogs. It sounds a lot like Jesus was calling the woman a dog, and he probably was. Jesus' response tells us something about the prejudice that Jesus inherited from his upbringing. It also tells us something about how Jesus understood his own mission. The children were the people of Israel. They were to be fed first. The Gentiles would be fed and cared for later, after the children had eaten. Maybe one day it would be time to help the Gentiles, but not yet. The children were not full. The problem was this woman and her little daughter, they didn't have that much time. They couldn't wait. So the woman, whose name we do not know, answered Jesus back, and she answered him very well. There are only two places in Mark where women get a line. Once at the resurrection and once here. And she uses that line so well. Jesus must have been surprised because most of the time people didn't know what to say to Jesus. Pharisees he always argued with were silent. They were supposed to be the smartest people around. But this woman in Tyre was different. She answered him right back, and she took that insult and transformed it into a metaphor for God's inclusive love. Even the dogs under the table get to eat the children's crumbs. Fine, call me a dog. I'll take the insult if I can get a little bit of help. In her village, Gentiles kept dogs in the house and treated them as members of the family. So even if she was a dog, she was still part of the family and could get a little food from under the table, and all she needed was a little food, just crumbs, just enough for her daughter to be well. You know, this Gentile woman, this woman of Syrophoenician origin, she turned out to be a really good theologian. She's the best theologian we've run into in Mark's gospel so far. And I wonder how Jesus felt when she answered him back that way. I imagine Jesus was surprised and glad because her answer meant that God could help her daughter. Her answer meant that the transforming power of God's love could include her and her family. Jesus said to the woman, "For saying that you may go. The demon has left your daughter." For saying that. Ordinarily, Jesus would say something like, "Because of your faith, your daughter is made well." But here he says, "For saying that," literally for your words. What does it mean to have faith? For some of us, having faith means we have the right answers to the questions the teachers ask. How many books are in the Bible? What's the first commandment? What's the greatest commandment? Who are the persons of the Trinity? How many articles in the Apostles' Creed? For some of us, having faith means that we're okay with things we don't understand. How's this airplane going to fly exactly? How's this situation going to work out? How will we get through this? I don't know. Have faith. But I wonder if this Gentile woman of Syrophoenician origin, this really good theologian, can teach us something about having faith with her words. Perhaps faith is a persistent, even a dogged belief in the transforming power of God's love. Perhaps having faith is believing in the transforming power of God's love even when you go to the door of heaven and the door is closed. Even when you knock on the door of heaven and you're pretty sure you hear someone say, "Go away." Or worse yet, you hear nothing at all and you think of walking away. Perhaps having faith is staying there anyway and not taking no for an answer. Maybe real faith, faith that is deeper than the right answers and blind trust, is the persistent belief in the transforming power of God's love that it will make all the difference. Maybe real faith is doggedly holding on to that belief despite all the evidence to the contrary, in the face of the doubts and the doubters, despite all the silence and all the grief, even at the grave. Maybe real faith is persistently believing in God's final and everlasting yes, despite every other no. I wonder if that's what it means to have faith. And I wonder if faith like that is forged and formed the most when we are advocating for others who are in need. Sometimes it seems like faith is a private thing. We work it out on our own in response to the challenges and concerns of our own lives, and it's forged in the pages of journals and long walks in the woods. But I see this woman kneeling at the feet of Jesus, pleading not for her own life, but for the life of her daughter. And I wonder, is faith formed the most when we're advocating for someone else who is in need? Is faith formed the most when we bring our dearest friend or our spouse or our child to the feet of Jesus? Is faith formed the most when we bring the poor in our community, the ones who have no place to sleep and not enough food or no health care, to the feet of Jesus? Is faith formed the most when we bring the victims of violence and all those who live in fear and all whose communities are not safe, when we bring them to the feet of Jesus? And if it's true that our faith is formed the most that way, then maybe one of the most important questions we can ask is, who needs our help? Who needs our sweat and tears and prayer? Who is struggling and needs our help? Maybe having faith is being with them and being for them and bringing them to the feet of Jesus and doggedly believing that the transforming power of God's love can make all the difference. I wonder how the Syrophoenician woman felt when she went home and her daughter was well. I wonder if she hugged her until her arms ached. I wonder if she cried until her face was wet with tears. I wonder if she invited all of her friends over for a celebration. I wonder if she thanked God that she never gave up. Amen.